To delve a bit back on the history of this great nation. Mr. Speaker, this country was once called the British East Africa Company in the early 1880-something. Then later on, this country became, that was a personal company, a private company. And later on, we became the British Protectorate. And later on, we became the British colony. And at a certain stage, we were allowed to do our own internal self-rule up to 1962. In 1963, we got our independence. In 1969, with agitation, we became a one-party state. And Mr. Speaker, in 1991, we went back and became a multi-party state. In 1992, we held our first general election under the multi-party constitution. And Mr. Speaker, since then there has been agitation for new constitutional dispensation until 2010, when we promulgated the current constitution. Mr. Speaker, since then there has been eventful activities in our country. During the just concluded general elections, we have had the Hasala effect. And just last month, we have had the Gen Z uprising. Under all this, one thing emerges, that Kenyans are resilient, Kenyans are ever optimistic, and Kenyans are very proud people when it comes to their country. Mr. Speaker, I want to send my condolences and empathies to those young Kenyans under the tag the Gen Zs, genuine Gen Zs, who decided to put a bit of awakening call on the leadership, on the political leadership of this country. Wherever you are, my sons and daughters, we have heard you, your message is loud, your message is clear, you have made clear points that have been implemented by His Excellency the President, and we want you to be patient. Don't delve into anything else. Whatever positive suggestions that you have made to improve on our governance, I want to assure you, as the Father of Parliament, as the longest serving member of Parliament, we have heard you, I have personally heard you. We will take all those issues into account, and I can assure you, business will not be as usual. As we do that, destruction, violence, and all other related issues that can negate the gains that we have made since independence will not add any value. I want to beseech you, wherever you are, because I know, as the gallant sons and daughters of the Republic of Kenya who have gone to school, we beseech you, don't destroy Kenya. We beseech you, wherever you are, be patient with the political class. Now that your points have been heard, and it's clear, and I want to repeat, and let me start from myself, because my daughters, my sons, and to some extent, even my grandchildren will soon be there. We have heard you, the message is clear. I want to also ask the political class that we must pause and say, what has led to this Gen Z's uprising? We must deal with corruption. We must deal with inefficiencies in government departments. We must stand for the rights of Kenyans as far as their governance activities are concerned. And therefore, for those of us who are in politics, for those of us who have been entrusted with the leadership of this country, we must do a bit of summative and formative evaluation and take into account those positive suggestions made by our sons and daughters. I want to ask you once again, please give the President and his government an opportunity to internalize and implement those positive suggestions that you have made. I am aware that right now there are a lot of underemployment. There are a lot of unemployments. So many graduates with first-class degrees are outside there in the field without jobs. This can only be sorted out if we put our heads together, if we collectively work for the premier nation called Kenya. Kenya is our motherland. For those of us who have had an opportunity, and I've had an opportunity of being the chairman of Defense and Foreign Relations, and having gone to many countries, I can tell you, we have a country that we ought to be proud of. Civil war only creates humanitarian crisis, environmental devastation, hunger, and total lawlessness. Wherever we are, Mr. Speaker, Having a country governed under the rule of law, under what you call constitutionalism, is not something that you can exchange for anything else. I want us just to look around and see what has happened, unfortunately, the things that happened to some of our neighbors and where they are today. I do also appreciate that we are not where we are supposed to be. We have lagged behind. This country in the 80s, in the 60s, was a donor country, Mr. Speaker. Our GDP was at par with South Korea. Our GDP was at par with Indonesia. Today, the GDP of South Korea is 50 times that of Kenya. We used to be a lending nation, donor nation, to the newly independent African countries. Today, we have lagged behind. These issues must be addressed collectively. The president alone cannot address. The citizenship must be ready to support the government. The president must be ready to listen to the citizens. The citizens must have faith in their leadership. The leadership must remain accountable, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, this is why I say, as the father of the 13th Parliament, there comes a time when we must all get together, reason, and collectively pursue a path that will add us to the list of developed nations, Mr. Speaker. That path cannot be achieved through violence. That path cannot be achieved through the activities that we have seen in the name of economic sabotage. Mr. Speaker, how do you create employment, yet the very avenues of creating employment are being sabotaged? When you say you want to occupy Jomo Kenyatta International Airport, which is the communication hub, the transport hub of the region, literally you want to grind our economic activities to a halt. Where will employment come from, Mr. Speaker? When you want to discourage the business people in creating wealth, where will employment come from? We are negating every positive activities our forefathers, our fathers have left to that. It is our generation. Mr. Speaker, I want to appeal to all of us. We must reason together. We must listen to each other. We must all say, what is it that I can add positively to this premier nation? We also do appreciate this is a country of many tribes. This is a country of many regions. This is a diverse country. Our diversity must be used to positively project the image of this country, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, wherever we are, politicians come and go, but Kenya will remain. Where are those freedom fighters? They are all gone. They have left us to take this country to another level. It's our time, and we must not allow this country to degenerate into the state of lawlessness when we are awake, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I do know politics is so divisive. We have had it. Elections come and go. We have had elections. We have a democratically elected government. President Ruto did not use our power. He was elected. The elections were disputed. The Supreme Court validated. He is the duly democratically elected president of the Republic of Kenya. Whereas you may have issues, can we do it through our established, democratically accepted process? And the process are there. We have our own political parties. We have our constitutions. We have the courts. We have other avenues of passing information. But Mr. Speaker, wherever we are, I want to plead with also my colleagues, the political class, those who have been yabbing around. I want to tell you, you have not seen the effects of civil war. You only need to go out. Please remember, I cannot be a refugee at this age. I cannot allow my grandchildren to be refugees in this age. I will do whatever it takes as an individual, as a leader, to make sure Kenya remains a united, democratic country. And this will not be a mean achievement. Mr. Speaker, I do know today what you said when you contributed touched me emotionally. Because there comes a time when a person must get out of that tribal yoke, regional thinking, and expand one's horizon of thinking and say, what is it that I can add to my country? Mr. Speaker, I know right now, we're in a very difficult period. Not only Kenya. Look at what's happening globally. Look at what has happened in Bangladesh the other day. Look at what has happened in America 2 days ago. Look at what is happening. There's a global general activities that are going on. But there, you saw the other day even President Biden say, look, we cannot afford to contribute to anything that negates the existence of the United States of America. What are we doing as leadership? Mr. Speaker, I want to recommit, and I want my sons and daughters, wherever they are, to listen. Your message was loud, your message was clear, your agenda was focused, and I'm sure we in the political class will give you an opportunity. And I also want to appreciate the President for hearing the cries of our children. That is why the President declined to assent to the finance bill. That is why the President dissolved his cabinet. That is why the President decided to accept to go to the social media platform. We have a listening President. Can we give him an opportunity to guide this country? Because without our support, it will be difficult to govern this country. And therefore, for God's sake, for the sake of this country, I want to ask the political class, and I like what you say today when you contributed, let us not be guided by our petty day-to-day political partnership driven by regional interest. Let us be driven by what brings this country together. Let us be driven by what constitutes the Premier Republic of Kenya. We will compete here, but outside there we are all members of parliament. If you read Article 95, Mr. Speaker, Article 94, as read with Article 95, Article 96, and even look at the opening chapter. Sovereignty is equated to representation. Where is that representation, Mr. Speaker? That representation must come in the form of accountability, in the form of being prepared to listen to what our people are saying, and that comes as part of our oversight role. That comes as part of our legislative role. That comes as part of our budget role. Mr. Speaker, my plea on this particular topic is, for God's sake, and I say I've traveled to over 136 countries, even countries that you do not know the names. I have covered, out of the 186, I've gone to over 136 countries in my over 2.5 something decades in Parliament. And I want to say, this is the most beautiful country, this is the most resilient country. Kenyans are the most generous and the most ever enthusiastic people that I've ever interacted with. This we must all be ready to protect. And I dare anyone say that Kenya requires all of us. Kenya requires all of us at every given stage. That is the only way. Devoid of our petty, and we'll have competition. Even if we go back to our villages, I have a competitor. You have a competitor. Even in your homestead, you will have a competitor. Without competition, we will not develop. That competition should be used positively. And I want to add, those of us in leadership, let us not be guided by emotions. Let us look at the mirror and see ourselves. What we have done, are we part of the problem? Can you be part of the solution? Can we change positions? It's only fools who don't change positions. If there's unemployment, let us all work hard and create wealth. How to create wealth is not destruction. On this topic, Mr. Speaker, join me. And I know I've had to say this because I was really emotionally touched when one of the international news outlets reported that Kenya is on the brink of a civil war because of what they have gathered on the streets. Luckily, by the grace of God, the next day, the streets were normal. Everything was going on normal. That reflects the resilience of the people of Kenya. Let us not take that for granted. Mr. Speaker, coming back to CDF, I have been a member of parliament without CDF. I have been a member of parliament without CDF. I have been also a member of parliament when Engineer Karue came up with the idea of CDF. I want to tell you this. When I was first elected, my constituency was the only constituency in the Republic of Kenya without a single secondary school, Mr. Speaker. Today, I'm representing the second constituency. That was the J West. I'm now in another constituency called Eldas. We have tens of secondary schools. We have tens of primary schools, courtesy of CDF. I want to urge you, for those who are associating, for those who want to tie us at the hip with CDF, then Member of Parliament has no role. Other than the role of the Member of Parliament pursuant to Article 95, the Member of Parliament has no role with CDF. The only thing Mr. Speaker, there's confusion. Allow me to say this. We have been in this parliament. We have witnessed the propagation of the current constitution. We do not have a federal government. We have an economic devolution at 3 levels. We have national, county, and CDF. And each category has its own players. So for those who want to rubbish CDF, I want to tell you, it will not happen during our lifetime. It will not happen during our lifetime. Because removing CDF is denying development to our people. For those, because of their, there are people who are ego-driven. There are people, the only thing they understand is they must create space for themselves, whether illegal or legal. These spaces must be created legally. Allow me to say this, Mr. Speaker. For those governors, and I will be the governor of Wajir in 2027. But nothing takes, inshallah, nothing removes the role of the member of parliament. The role of the member of parliament is distinct. The mandate and function of CDF is clearly spelled out in CDF Act. Why are these shenanigans going around to remove CDF? It's simply because of one thing. There are, you remember the way people want to consolidate power and resources around them. They are not after development. I want to ask you, resist anything that attempts to remove CDF. Whether it's LSK, whether it is the Senate, whether it is the county, whether it's the governor, we must resist and stand firm and say CDF is not the property of the member of parliament. CDF is a facility for that particular constituency. And that must remain, and it will remain this.
Only 1 minute. Only 1 minute.
Under all this, we must also ask the fund managers and the people who deal with CDF that CDF must be managed in the most accountable manner, in the most transparent manner. That is the only way we can also be accountable. So I want to urge those who are also tasked with the running CDF, you must be prepared to be held accountable for how the resources are used and how efficient those resources reach those people who are attending. Mr. Speaker, with this, I support. And thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Keynan. The Honorable Joshua Kimilu, the MP for Kaiti.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me the opportunity. And before, Mr. Speaker, I contribute, I want to thank the committee for the good job they have done, led by the chair and represented here by Honorable Billy.